Base is dropped on a new round of soccer down here, and once again, you're going to catch me on days before the show starts where I'm still trying to figure out order of punching and layering and all these kinds of things, and trying to figure out, okay, so if I'm here to do this, then this needs to happen, and this and this and this and this and this. So there'll be times when I'll trigger the show to go live, and you'll see me and Jared up first instead of a slate, because I'm still trying to figure out, okay, what punches where and what punches where. So good morning. It's a Tuesday. Bases dropped on a new round of soccer down here. There's your official open. Busy show. We can go a bunch of different directions because it's Tuesday Thoughts. I know that we'll be spending a lot of time on the Yates Report that came out yesterday. And as I told Jarrett before the show started, I already have 9 cabs open. And legitimately, this is going to be something that we're going to be tracking for a while. I've already reached out to a couple of different cities, because literally this is going to be a city-by-city thing almost when it comes to the individual franchises in the NWSL. And I'm trying to get reaction from each and every single one of those, because they are their own micro story in the greater scheme of the Yates Report. And so we've reached out to some folks, and we'll have some 1v1s hopefully coming up in short order with the Yates Report and what happened yesterday. Bombshell report that came out from former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, who's over at King and Spalding now, and it was 173 pages. And I would recommend that even if you tackle 17 or 20 pages a day to go through this, because it is that important. And we'll get into that during the show today. Obviously, we'll get into Knicks and Leicester knocking off Nottingham Forest, and the running gag apparently is now that Nottingham Forest may have more transfers than points this season in the Premier League, the way things are shaping up. And we'll get into the weekend that was in Major League Soccer outside of Atlanta United. If you want to continue talking about Atlanta United, we can do that. Since we're based here, we've got a lot of stuff to discuss where that is as well, heading into the final weekend of the Major League Soccer season for 2022. And we'll get into that all week long. We've got our guests coming up throughout the week. Jared is waiting patiently for the opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee, kickoffcoffeeco.com. And I will turn to my right and show the QR code for those who are watching on Twitch. There you go. And once again, you can follow along at Kickoff Coffee CO on Twitter, Facebook, on Instagram. Kickoff Coffee, you use the code SoccerDownHere15. That's what you do. And you get 15% off of your purchase. And they, in turn, take 10% and reinvest it into the youth game in and of itself. And, Jarrett, what I wanted to do for opening kickoff this morning is go into the announcement that came out just before we came on the air, where Fox has unveiled their full 2022 World Cup broadcast team. And, you know, that you have your standard names that are associated with the product on the network. John Strong, Stu Holden, they are your number one broadcast team. You have John Paul Della Camera, and quoting other announcers on the network, you have American soccer legend Kobe Jones, who is paired with JP Della Camera, and you have 3 other pairings that are part of their play-by-play and match analyst situation. We'll get into that. Obviously, you'll have studio analysts. You've got Alexi Lawless. You've got Clint Dempsey. Annie Aluko. Mo Adu is going to be a part of that. Kelly Smith rejoins Fox as well. Carly Lloyd and Chad Johnson, an interesting element there. So Ocho Cinco joins the studio analyst part. Rob and Kate, Rob Stone, Kate Abdo. They're your studio host, reporters on site. Jenny Taft, Rodolfo Landeros, Jeff Shreves, Tom Rinaldi in features, and obviously Mark Clattenburg and Dr. Joe are your rules analysts. But getting into the play-by-play and match analyst elements, your other 3 broadcast teams, and this was part of the news peg for me this morning. Jackie Utley, Warren Barton, Ian Dark, Landon Donovan, irony alert, Derek Ray, and Allie Wagner. So that is your complete rundown of everybody for FOX when it comes to your broadcast teams for the World Cup in short order. Derek Ray and Allie Wagner. I like that pairing. I like to see Derek Ray involved in this situation.
Closest to Scotsman's getting to the World Cup, unfortunately, but yeah, I like Derek Ray a lot. I'm excited to see how this transpires. Um, uh, it feels weird, like you couldn't throw it back and do JP and Tommy Smith.
I know. Or bring
Just
in
put
Ty Keogh for a one-off. Yeah.
yeah. I'm interested in this balance you have of studio analysts, some interesting pairings in the booth. I want to hear how it all sounds. It's one of those things that you can plot things out all day long and twice on Sunday about how you want to do the game as a team. Until you do it, you don't really know.
Yeah.
And then the studio will be interesting. Chad Johnson being here is that one came out of left field, but I'm kind of okay with it. Because he does, if nothing else, man. Look, I get that Chad Johnson played the other football, but he does have a genuine passion for the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see how he does on the TV, on the desk. He can snipe across the desk if needed.
It's
He's
true.
never been shy about his opinion, but if nothing else, I enjoy the fact that you have taken a risk in putting someone on there who has a genuine passion and enjoyment for the sport itself. Because I would much prefer you do that than find some former player who doesn't really care. They played, they enjoyed it, and they're moved on with their life, and they're not that invested in it at this point because people have different phases of life. So, great job. I am much in favor of doing this.
I'm looking forward to seeing how it translates because there have been times where Chad Johnson has been more than happy to sit there and say, I will try out. I will play for Team X. I will show you what I can do.
Oh, he tried out for SKC about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah. And so, I mean, so you have someone like that. And like I said, I want to see how it translates. I want to see how they let him loose on the desk. And, when you have him paired with, with Rob and Alexi and Kelly Smith may end up being the straight man in all of this, the one who has to get everything back on the rails for Fox.
But that's one of the most important jobs in any desk is to be the JB of early 2000s and late 90s Fox, for instance, or what Kirk Menefee is now.
Yes.
God bless Kirk Menefee. He's not the same as what JB was, man.
Mm-hmm.
That Fox desk back in the day was something else, or what Ernie Johnson is today inside the NBA. You have to have that straight man to, even if they're not the main host, you got to have somebody to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm. And that's when you have, and Rob and Alexi will send it sideways, and when you have somebody like Ocho, who will be more than happy to voice his opinions, and I'm sure that he will wear his stars and stripes on his sleeve as a part of this whole process. I want to see how they unleash him to all of us. But no, when we got to see the irony of Ian Dark and Ian Dark and Landon Donovan, that to me I thought was really interesting. And you look at we talk about Tom Rinaldi with his features and Kate Abdo with the night side. I think that
Tom Rinaldi's just, to your point, he's just going to try and make you cry every time.
Yeah. So a daily basis of Tom Rinaldi trying to chase after features. But, I want to know when it comes to the organizing committee, how much they're going to let the reporters report. That to me is another element of all of this. How are you stuck to just doing stuff on site? How honest do you get to be if the stadia aren't up to snuff? And you're talking about the renewability, for lack of a better word, of how they're being constructed and all these kinds of things. That's what I want to know about all of this. How much of a journalist are they going to let the journalists be if you're a rights holder? And it's one of those delicate dances, obviously, but it's one of those things that I would like to see when we have this discussion is literally, are you going to let the journalists journal and the reporters report when it comes to what we anticipate happening in Qatar?
Yeah, this is, and you know what? The elephant in the room, I think one of the elephants in the room, for there will be multiple because of where you were holding this thing,
Mm-hmm.
is, how are the female reporters going to be treated?
Yeah.
That has been an interesting question for me. And how will they be, how will their treatment be, kind of behind the scenes? I want to see how it goes because, yeah, I might have questions about it all before it's all said and done. Um, Hopefully it goes well. Hopefully everyone's able to stay safe and just do their job and keep their head down and have a good time. Tom Rinaldi probably will not shy away from something dodgy at some point and push the limits of what he can get away with.
Yep.
Um, I don't know what those limits look like. Those limits are probably much more strict than what we are used to seeing. But
Mm-hmm.
again, FIFA chose to hold the World Cup in a problematic place under very problematic circumstances. So if problematic things are mentioned, you can't stick your hand in the fire and then complain that it got burnt
Yes.
because you let Tom Rinaldi loose in Qatar.
Yes. So that's what it's one of the questions that I'm going to have up my sleeve and in my hip pocket when we get to everything in November and every November and December, and obviously we'll have all of our coverage here.
So people are happy that a certain
Yes.
Taylor Twellman is not there. The
Uh,
Kirk Herbstreit of MLS, everybody.
yeah, and so yeah, that's
That carries layers too.
yes, it does. Why? Yes, sir, it does. Dot dot dot. But no, it belongs to FOX, and we'll see how they are allowed to cover and what they choose to cover. So that's the largest element of all of this. And now that is your opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee, kickoffcoffeeco.com. Once again, QR code for those watching on Twitch. And, like I said, I need to figure out technology where I can sit here and have a QR code, at some point where I can raise a QR code in a banner so folks can click on it. And it's a lot bigger than me when I turn to my right and show you a QR code that's about 2 inches square from.
If nothing else, could we take a picture of it and just make a takeover screen that you could just activate?
Well, I could probably do that. Yeah, I could probably upload that kind of a thing, and we'll see if that
Yeah.
happens. I like that idea. All right, so we'll do that.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll try to bend that corner next time that I mention it. And I'll bring it up as a banner. Kickoffcoffeeco.com. Once again, you go to Kickoff Coffee CO on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and our friends at Kickoff Coffee. Once again, reminder that you use the code Soccer Down Here 15. And thanks to everybody who has and gotten your start and your fix with Kickoff Coffee to start your day. So use the code Soccer Down Here 15. You get 15% off of everything that you invest in Kickoff Coffee, and then they in turn take 10%, reinvest it into the youth initiatives and the youth game. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Okay, yesterday the Yates Report came out, and it is sadly in a lot of elements not shocking. It is profoundly disappointing. It is angering. And I'm barely scratching the surface when it comes to those most base emotions about the questions in this year-long investigation from former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, who's over at King and Spalding, and this 173-page report that basically damns multiple people, the NWSL, U.S. Soccer, individuals employed by both, and and as I said, when it comes to this, it is literally something that has angered multiple people in multiple markets attached to the NWSL, as it should. And you have newspaper reporters and columnists calling for people to be fired. When you get the anger of Sally Jenkins from the Washington Post, that is one of the last things that you need, is to have that hair dryer turned on you. And Sally Jenkins turned on her hair dryer and turned it into an absolute F-18 engine on this whole process yesterday. And rightfully so. As I told Jarrett before the show, I have 9 tabs open already on this to talk about this morning, because it literally is a market by market description of how disgusting it was at points to see all of this. And in the initial work that came out from The Athletic, from Meg Linehan, and Molly Hensley Clancy over at the Washington Post. It has been, and I'm trying to choose my words, but at the same time, I know I don't want to. As I said, it's been disappointing. It's been damning. Sadly, it's not surprising when you look at cultures at times. But to see it come out in the volumes that it came out in yesterday, we had a feeling that a lot of this stuff was going on, but to the depth and breadth and ego that was attached to it, it is maddening and angering and all across the board. When you look at it, you sit there and say, okay, can it get any deeper? Can it get any worse? And the answer yesterday, sadly, Jarrett, was yeah. And it got a hell of a lot worse and a lot more disappointing and a lot more angering and a lot more frustrating at the lack of action that could have been taken and should have been taken, where multiple individuals were let down by their employer and by their governing body. And we are now to this point where you have all of this information that has cascaded in this report. And once again, we circle back to the idea of, okay, all of this information is out here. What are you going to do about it? And that's where we are once again, sadly, when you look at multiple agencies that are attached to this. What are you going to do about it? And that's where we are once again with this whole discussion.
Yeah. So, for instance, so this one bugs me, and I will keep coming back to it because
Yeah.
it clicked in my head yesterday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just adults getting impacted by this, and we don't know the full impact of all this stuff. But like, go to Portland, you have Olivia Moultrie impacted by this, who was 16 years old when she
Yeah.
started playing for that club.
Yep.
That's a child
Mm-hmm.
who is getting potentially, subjected to this harassment
Yep.
or negligence. In best case scenario, it's negligence that she was dealing with. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. It's I would assume we won't see Merritt Paulson open up his Twitter account anytime soon.
No.
Um,
If he's
so
smart. If he is smart, he won't.
we'll see. The thing is, though, the amount of people that just blatantly lied to everyone's face about stuff is just exhausting.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are happy to, wag the finger. I can't believe so and so did that. Like, man, at this point, I don't know who to believe about who knew or didn't know stuff
Right.
because so much of it out of this report is, oh, they knew, they were a part of it. Like, I don't like just keep your mouth shut at this point if you were, associated with these organizations because, and it's not just Portland, by the way. Don't get it twisted. I don't mean
No.
to just rag on Merritt. Like, he ain't the only one. There's plenty who can catch the fire.
Mm-hmm.
But man, it is just so. Yeah, dude. I don't know, man. It's complicated and it's annoying and it's deep and
Mm-hmm.
it's systemic. Not even getting into the talks about racism in soccer and how that hits all levels, especially in women's soccer. The whole damn thing's a mess. Yeah, half of them didn't even have HR departments that the players could go to
Yeah.
complain about things,
How do you
and
not have an HR department?
because you're run like an amateur organization.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you. Getting beyond that, yeah. The whole damn thing is exhausting because it needs to be taken care of. But I think there are times when you look at it and you're like, this is a hell of a hill to have to climb, but you have to climb it. I don't know is for fact. My speculation is that the rise of the English Women's League, the French Women's League, the rise of this game, the women's game around the world has made it easier for players to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you got blacklisted at NWSL back in the day, and if other leagues weren't, if other leagues were not growing and paying good wages, or if you were concerned with this is a whole other kettle of fish, but if you were concerned that speaking out and getting blacklisted would get you blacklisted from the national team, which Jesus, that's a whole different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying. You might feel like you have to keep your mouth shut so you keep this career or advance your career.
Yeah, because of
Oh,
those who are connected to individuals
yes.
who are connected and the whole power and influence dynamic that's attached to this whole thing. Morning, everybody who's hopping on. Obviously, we're talking about the Yates Report.
And Jason, I don't know, man. If the NWSL has the stomach to do the things that need to be done, I would assume they're gonna I would assume Portland Thorns. Mayor Paulson can't own the Portland Thorns going forward. He can't.
No, I don't think he can.
I don't think he can own the Portland Timbers going forward. But that's a different. We were talking about this in the green room yesterday. That's a different conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and that involves legal questions that I don't have the answer to.
Yeah.
That MLS can't just snatch the team away from him. I don't think.
Yeah. Because it's a different league, and you have to parse that boundary.
They're going to have to write out the legal reasons for it, that kind of thing. That's what I'm suspecting. Now, I might be wrong. They might be able to just straight up say, "Nope, we took the team from him. That's it. The game is over."
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, it's WSL got some decisions to make, and hopefully some of these newer teams. You had LA coming in. I'd like to say Louisville, but y'all were involved in it. Y'all had people involved in it. You want the newer teams that are coming in to kind of push things in the right direction, but that's hard, and it's going to be tough to get some people's trust back, and that's understandable because of everything that's happened, and because we are right back to the two words that people dread but need to be heard is you knew.
Mm-hmm.
Bunch of y'all knew.
Yeah.
And you were just, I don't know, you're just fine with it because it was convenient, because it worked, because you were able to just carry on with it. Yeah, Jill Ellis is another different conversation. To John's point, having 9 tabs open for this whole thing. I mean, there's a lot to digest from it. I'm very interested to see what NWSL does here, because it felt like a year ago they were really on the rise. Things were going great for the NWSL. And this doesn't have to be a death knell for them.
No.
It can be if they let it.
I mean, you look at what is happening in the expansion markets of the NWSL, specifically in San Diego, with attendance. I'm talking on the field. I know that the Jill Ellis issue has been brought up in conversation, but if you look at Angel City, look at what Angel City has been doing with their approach and with their ownership group and the individuals that are involved in it. You know that they aren't going to accept anything like what came out in the Yates Report. Going to one of the tabs that I have open from Nancy Armour at USA Today. She is calling for Merritt Paulson and Chicago Red Stars owner Armin Whistler to sell their NWSL teams. Red Stars have a consortium of Whistler and I want to say another 24 individuals that include Sarah Spain of ESPN, who on her social media yesterday was recording, and she's like, I'd like to say things, but I can't for obvious reasons. Armour is calling for Gavin Wilkinson, no longer the Thorns GM, but has the same role with the Timbers, to be barred from working in American soccer. Same for Mike Golub, president of business for both the Thorns and the Timbers. And, we can get into what Golub specifically said to Cindy Parlow-Cone when she was employed as head coach of the Portland Thorns. And she is now the head of U.S. Soccer. These kinds of things are being said. Jeff Plush, former NWSL commissioner, no longer affiliated with the soccer world. He is U.S. Olympic Paralympic Committee. They are now looking at him and wondering, that they're looking at Jeff Plush, who's now the CEO of USA Curling. So you have the USOPC looking at Jeff Plush, who was commissioner at the time that a lot of these allegations came to the fore. Cindy Parlow-Cone quoted yesterday, I think the report shows we have systemic issues beyond any one individual. Sally Yates writes in the report, when teams, the NWSL and U.S. Soccer, failed to adequately respond to player complaints, they created the impression that certain types of misconduct were acceptable. In doing so, they not only failed to address reported misconduct, they left other players who could be future victims at risk, end quote. Jarrett, to your point about those like Olivia Moultrie, who are a part of this. And, Molly Hensley Clancy came out with the Washington Post article, Verbal and Emotional Abuse by former Red Stars coach Rory Dames. I mean, and this is part of requested/required reading for the next while, because this is going to be a story, and it is a story that requires a lot of digestion from a lot of different places. And you can't take something and just understand it and accept it at its top level. It has to be something that has to be looked at from a lot of different places, a lot of different positions, and a lot of different angles, because of all of the interweaving that is attached. By the end of the 21 season, the NWSL, half of the league's teams parted ways with their coaches following player complaints. You saw the moments that were had on the pitch, the moments of togetherness where players were having their moments of silence. I want to say in the 6th or 7th minute in matches, and you saw the support that was there from the fan base of the NWSL. And so you have all of this, and the Paul Riley hiring, dismissal in Portland, hiring in Western New York. We got that information in the report as well. U.S. soccer officials told Merritt Paulson, Gavin Wilkinson in 2014 national team players had complained Paul Riley had created a hostile environment, in quotation marks, and belittled and verbally abused players. Sally Yates writes, no action was taken. Portland eventually fires Riley after another player reported unwanted advances and retaliation, but made no mention of it publicly. When the New York Flash, Western New York Flash, hired Riley, Plush said Wilkinson had told the Flash, and this is from Nancy Armour at USA Today, that Riley had been, quote, put in a bad position by the player, and that he'd hire Riley again in a heartbeat. Paulson congratulated the Flash president on the hire, wrote he had a lot of affection for Riley. Players told Yates' team that Paulson made inappropriate comments to them. And this is, I want to say, over 200 interviews were for this report. The Thorns acknowledged to Yates Gullit was undergoing remediation, some of it apparently by himself, some of it, ordered that he has to go through corporate steps, but some of it he's going through on his own after former players told the Oregonian he created a toxic work environment for women and working mothers. Go ahead, Jarrett.
No, go ahead.
Whistler told Yates he'd received complaints as far back as 2014 about Rory Dames making sexist, racist, abusive, and other prejudicial remarks to Red Stars players and creating a hostile work environment. And according to Armour, yet even now, Whistler said he doesn't think anything he saw or was told about Dames constituted abuse or misconduct or required him to take action. Players said Rory Dames would get so mad he would spit in their faces while screaming at them, belittling and demeaning them, creating a fear-based culture. But Whistler said he saw nothing that constituted abuse or misconduct or required him to take action.
Okay, so this is cultural. This is a cultural thing with coaching. And John, I know you'll be able to speak to this because of the high school football coaching culture. This is a cultural thing, and it's a shift that the hardcore coaches don't really get away with that stuff anymore. You know what I mean? Like you can't be Bud Kilmer anymore. Those days are pretty much done.
I still see that. I do.
I'm sure. But depending on the sport, depending on who's involved on the player side and ages, like that does not fly anymore in a lot of places. You can't be that person. You can't be, in football, it would be, grabbing somebody by the face mask and jerking them around, yelling so close that you're spitting on them, even if you're not intentionally trying to spit on them, but you're yelling at them so much and so closely that you're spitting on them. Mm-hmm. It's a cultural thing. Like we're to that point now, I think, with the ability, with the way coaches are nowadays, where it's not accepted anymore. You can't be that person. You can be a hard coach without.
as Jared switches cells and it's wireless here.
Who was tough as nails.
Robot Jared is taking over.
Yes, sorry. But
There we go.
I played for a coach like that who was a hard ass, but was never demeaning.
Yeah.
Like you can find coaches like that. Like look, man, like Tata Martino was a hard ass on his players. He worked them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, go find Bobby Boswell's tweet thread about pressing, where it's that he worked them hard.
Mm-hmm. To your point, story time with John. When I was growing up, and so this is basically in the late 1790s when Georgia was a new state, and our buddy James Oglethorpe had just discovered the land and created the state of Georgia. Would eventually be the state of Georgia. That's how long ago we're talking. I played little league ball, played high school baseball, those kinds of things. One of the coaches that I had, I was playing first base, and I was doing the standard amount of gardening that you do with, first base. You're sitting there, and it's like, okay, you want to make sure that the dirt around the base is as clean as possible, so the first base umpire can see anything that's bang bang or anything like that. I'm doing gardening, and for some reason, the pitcher decided to throw the ball over to first base and check on the runner, who was, like right there. And my
That's why
head
you
is
look over your shoulder before you throw to first base. First of all, Kerry.
yeah. And so a pitcher throws it over to first. I'm doing gardening. Ball gets past me, goes, off the dugout, goes down the right field line. The manager of the team at the time is ripping me a new one and says to me, quote, "It will be a cold day in hell before you play first base ever again." Literally, he said this in front of an audience in a game. He tells this to me. And, I was like, all right, whatever. You're an ass. And so sure enough, I spent the remainder of the season out in right field. But that kind of stuff, thankfully, does not fly. And Abby's in this morning. My son played for a schmuck who was demeaning. I had him switch clubs since the club wouldn't do anything. Amen.
Well, I mean, it's that scene from and I know it's a movie and it's a dramatization. It's not always like this. It's that scene from Varsity Blues where Kilmer's tearing his players a new one, and the parents are sitting, the dads are sitting there drinking beers in their chairs, like look at them having the time of their lives. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
Like no, man. Like, but that's the thing is like you got people who are like, yeah, that's fine. You want to wind up players and yell at them and call them everything, but a shot of God sewing machine. That's just good tough coaching. That's just tough love. But
that's crap.
Yeah, man. Like, that's the thing is like, so have multiple levels of a workflow here of not just one person who might be stuck in their old ways of, that's fine. He's just yelling at them. They're fine. Like, but they might not be fine.
Yeah.
We care so much. We talk about caring so much about mental health in society, but in those situations, I feel like we just kind of eschew it.
Yeah. And to this day, I mean, in the present tense, I still see coaches using colorful metaphors, whether it's in practice or a game setting. And it's disappointingly demeaning. And the notion that it's the heat of battle for me, I don't know when this Rubicon was crossed for me, but it was. I'm like, whatever. Do it differently. And it's fatiguing to see this kind of stuff go down and still have it be accepted in the levels that it is. And I know that what we're talking about is a very small notion and a very small percentage of everything that has gone on that has come out in this report. But once again, Abby, to your point in the Twitch pitch, to anyone's point, it's not okay to do this. And it got worse when it came to coaches calling players over to watch film. And yes, I did just use air quotes, and basically have it turn into a feel up session, unwanted by the player who had to laugh it off so they basically could keep their job. It's infuriating to see that kind of a culture and see that it is accepted and let happen and continued to fester. We let Mana Shim down. We let Sinead Farrelly down. We let players like that down.
Yeah, so we let a lot of unnamed players down.
Yes. We let
And
a lot of folks
I
down.
know we use we, understandably so, but like, man, it's like, I don't know how you work on this going forward. Like, do you have multiple people? Again, do you have like a multiple person workflow saying who is approving something? You know, who is reviewing things? It's not just that way. It's not just one person saying, "Well, I think everything looks just fine over there."
Yeah.
Like,
Is it a tribunal? Is it,
yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. Yeah, Nick, sadly, winning coaches still get away with far too much. True.
Yep.
Absolutely. Because if you are winning, whatever that translates into, if you're more than 500, if you're in the playoffs, if you're doing in whatever sport, if you are still winning in air quotes, and yes, I just used it again for those who are listening on audio. If you are winning, you're going to be able to get away with it. And it's accepted as style. It's accepted as who that coach is. Oh, that's just the coach being the coach. That's just him and how he's done things. No.
I mean,
No.
we went and literally observed this 2-3 weeks ago. We went to a softball game where my wife's niece was playing, and she's set to go play college softball after this year. Plays travel most of the year, but still plays high school. The coach, man, you want to talk about someone who nothing was good enough for her? Um, literally, we find out after they got shut down in the game. Literally, we find out the girl who shut them down was an LSU commit, so it made more sense. But it was just this coach who just and nothing was good enough. Everything, like, even when something went right, it was you didn't do this right. You didn't do this right. You can't, especially with kids, man. Kids are still developing mentally, emotionally. You can't just beat them down over and over and over. You can't. If you just pummel them into the ground emotionally, it doesn't foster growth. It doesn't foster a positive relationship between coach and player. It's just, I don't know, man. It's bad, but
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpack about the whole damn thing.
Yeah. And we're obviously
about the culture of coaching is an entirely different conversation we can get into about the way players are dealt with, about the way coaches deal with them, about the way we talk. Like, talk is cheap about mental health, about how we actually apply that talk and apply that principle to actually caring about someone's mental health, about caring about the physical health of athletes as well, especially younger athletes.
Yep. And it continues into professional leagues as well. I mean, just because, the adults, adult athletes should be treated the same once again. I mean, you can't do it for young and developing athletes. You shouldn't do it for professional athletes who are in fear of their job in the first place because the league at the time was run on a shoestring budget and didn't have things like HR departments. So this is, and there have been times where NWSL players take jobs in the off season to help augment their salaries in the NWSL, and you feel like to keep your job, you have to act a certain way and take it. And it has come out in this report that coaches and front office folks let it run rampant, and it's disgusting on fronts. This is when you turn into a pumpkin, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll be back at it tomorrow. That's the easy part. But no, we'll be back at it tomorrow, and obviously this is not the last time we'll be talking about it as things continue to grow and grow and grow. But it's all good. Trust me, it's not the end of the discussion, Jarrett. So we'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Yeah, and to Jason's point, the control and power these people have over people's lives and livelihoods is wrapped up in the economics of women's sport. It does feel like a trap a lot of times. A trap you're entering into because it gives you an opportunity, and it's got to be tough emotionally. It's man, it's a lot. It's a lot of BS.
Yeah, it is. But obviously, we'll keep talking about it, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow. Yeah.
That sounds good.
All right, Jarrett Smith hanging out with us on a Tuesday. Jared will be back with us on Wednesday. Nick's to an earlier point. Agree with many people saying that these people never be involved with soccer in any way ever again, not just removed from current positions. I want to see if I can find the words that were put out there, and it might be the Sally Jenkins column of, let's see, and looking at the Jenkins column, let's see, quoting from Sally Jenkins of the Washington Post. Now we find that our singularly great national women's soccer program was a hotbed of snarling, cruddified lowlifes such as Christy Holly, who during a film session stuck his unwanted hands down a player's pants and upper shirt, and whose next job, judging by this report, should be cleaning the grease trap in a prison kitchen. Quote, the players affected are not shrinking violets, Yates, a former acting attorney general, wrote in her executive summary released Monday. Quote, they are among the best athletes in the world. They include members of the U.S. women's national team, veterans of multiple World Cup and Olympic tournaments, and graduates of legendary NCAA Division I soccer programs. In well over 200 interviews, we heard report after report of relentless, degrading tirades, manipulation that was about power, not improving performance, and retaliation against those who attempted to come forward. The Yates Report, and this is once again still Sally Jenkins. The Yates Report differs from all the others in two significant respects. For the first time, an independent investigator has put a finger squarely on the extent to which American women athletes are so reluctant to characterize themselves as victims that they, quote, are conditioned to accept and respond to abusive coaching behaviors, end quote. The rare vocal complaints of a Christian press fell on such deaf and, quote, desensitized, end quote, ears that as late as 2019, long after the exposure of the Larry Nassar scandal, mind you, the top U.S. Soccer Federation officials seriously considered naming the utterly scurrilous Paul Riley, and this is Sally Jenkins, as the next coach of the national team, despite receiving a detailed report of Riley's relentless, unwanted sexual pursuit of Portland Thorns player Monashim, whom he benched when she rejected him. Second, Yates takes dead aim at the false front that is safe sport, and this is another aspect of the report. And it's high time. Safe sport, and this is Sally Jenkins again. Safe sport is a flimsy bill of goods the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee frantically sold to Congress in 2018 as a preventative measure against future abuse scandals. But as Yates establishes with breathtaking specificity, safe sport is little more than another cover-up operation, a litigation avoidance ploy, and bottomless pit in which to dump complaints and disguise inaction. By Yates's count, Safe Sports somehow found a way to administratively stymie 1,350 of the 1,509 complaints it received from 2019 to 2020. So basically 90% of the complaints were put to the side with no action. Just 122 led to a formal resolution. One reason is that Safe Sport is so abuser-friendly that its appeals process is, quote, unlike that even afforded criminal defendants, end quote, Yates wrote. Forces complainants to rehash their abuse through multiple cycles and can prohibit bodies, such as U.S. Soccer, from sharing any specific allegations against an abuser, even if they're supported by substantial evidence, end quote. On top of that, Safe Sport is farcically underfunded. It has just 30 employees to deal with 11 million American athletes. That's not a system, it's a sham. All right, so that's part of Sally Jenkins. And like I said, what I would ask is don't lock yourself into one source in all of this. Read the report. Come up with your own conclusions. Go into each individual market and read stuff there. We'll go into other markets, like we'll go into the Portland market, and we'll go into columns and news that were placed there. We'll go into the national work from Steph Yang here from The Athletic in just a little bit. Once again, we'll get a Nancy Armour from USA Today. Nix, you had mentioned what the NWSL. I am of the mindset, sadly, now is I will believe it when I see it. When it comes to an organization, a franchise, or a governing body. The NWSL yesterday put this out as a statement, quote, I'm going to immediately review the Yates Report. Okay. opening sentence. Then, we greatly appreciate our players, staff, and stakeholders' cooperation with both investigations, especially during the ongoing season. We recognize the anxiety and mental strain that these pending investigations have caused and the trauma that many, including players and staff, are having to relive. We continue to admire their courage in coming forward to share their stories and influence all the changes necessary to keep moving our league forward. Establishing trust and confidence between the league, its players, and other key stakeholders remains a central focus for the NWSL. And we know that we must learn from and take responsibility for the painful lessons of the past in order to move the league, capital L, into a better future. The findings and recommendations from both reports will be critical to informing and implementing systemic reform and ensuring that the NWSL is a league where players are supported on and off the pitch and with safe and professional environments to train and compete. The NWSL, NWSLPA joint independent investigation into misconduct is ongoing. All right, they have their own that is going on a separate track. They've asked the joint investigative team to consider the recommendations set forth by the Yates Report when making their recommendations. Moreover, they've asked the joint investigative team to review and investigate as necessary the findings in the Yates Report when concluding their report. And they have an email address at the bottom of the release, the NWSL does. If any current former players and staff with information relating to discrimination, harassment, abuse, and retaliation or bullying, they've got an email address so you can send stuff. I'd love to know the effectiveness of that in the overall as we continue to go forward. Soccer for Good OG. All of this abuse is just another ugly facet of the larger society that devalues love, civility, and human kindness. Abuse, dehumanization, and violence are the logical outcomes of a world that has lost its soul. And so what I will do right there, that's what Soccer for Good OG has up this morning. Frankly, and to your point, OG, it's a lot easier to be nice. It legitimately should be a natural reaction to encourage, to uplift, to support. Instead, we have individuals, and I'm not tying it just specifically to this instance that we're talking about this morning. And Bern, we'll get into your thought in just a second. It's a hell of a lot easier to be nice and supportive. Doesn't matter what you may think about an individual or a particular situation, but it's a lot easier to be nice and help uplift folks. We have always said here, when it comes to teams and franchises and growth, that rising tide lifts all boats. So be there for each other in this. Be there to support. Be there to encourage. Instead of being so small or small-minded that you think intimidation is the way to go about things, to keep your place, to keep your position, and to keep your element of power in a certain sphere, that you think that you have to impose your will to reinforce the fact that you're the top of the ladder, instead of being an example for others, being a positive example for others, being a negative example in the past meant that you kept your place. Why not keep your place by being a beacon for others, lifting others, being examples, being role models? Be a role model of how to and how instead of how not to. Extends to referees, fans, staffers, and coaches, etc. Absolutely. Be supportive. It's a lot better. I think we are a lot better as a people. We are a lot better as a place. Be empathetic. Absolutely. Understand where the other person is coming from when it comes to a particular situation. Understand what they're going through. Be there as that ear. Be there as that human bartender. Be there as that individual. Be there as that friend. If you sense something isn't right, ask. Ask what's wrong. Don't just let it happen. don't just let it happen. Be there and be supportive, because when you're supportive in numbers, think of the influence that you can have positively in something like this. Burned. Talk about desensitized. The Spanish FA is backing their women's national team coach Vilda over the complaints of 15 of their star players, and the Spanish media siding with the FA, who claim dictatorial and dehumanizing behavior by the guy. They'd rather play without their 15 best players than fire that jerk. Unbelievable. I remember seeing that story. Yeah. And I will continue to say that this story involving the U.S. Soccer Federation and the NWSL and its owners and its players, sadly, I think we're just getting started. This is the Yates Report is opening the door and letting the sun shine in. And we have let so many people down in this. I think it's incumbent upon all of us, whether we are journalists, hosts, fans, friends, players, we've got to do our best going forward. Going through the Oregonian. Oregon Live is the website, and they've hit this hard. Ryan Clark with his news, Bill Oram with his column yesterday, and to the point that Jarrett made in the first hour, that's how Bill Oram started his column yesterday. You knew. And he says, I'm not talking about you, Merritt Paulson, or you, Gavin Wilkinson. It's not your turn yet. I'm also not talking about you, the enablers and cowards who operated behind the scenes to foment a culture of unimpeded abuse and wanton misogyny. The self-protectors who took a sport that teaches our daughters strength and builds them up and let it become overrun by lechers and creeps who did nothing but tear them down. Your time will come. I'm talking about you. This is Bill Oram once again at the Oregonian, Oregon Live. You, the Thorns fans who protested at every game. You, the Timbers supporters since the 1970s who refused to renew season tickets. You, the Timbers Army and Rose City Riveters who cheered for the players and coaches but drew a firm line at the front office. You, Portland. You knew that far greater accountability was needed from Paulson and Wilkinson and the leaders of the NWSL. You relentlessly demanded it. You knew that there had been no justice for Mana Shim and Sinead Fairley and the other women who came forward to say they'd been groomed, manipulated, and coerced by Paul Riley. And sidebar, Riley has denied all of these allegations. Back to Oram. You knew that all the accountability initiatives could be nothing more than words as long as the Thorns and Timbers were run by men who could not pass a simple multiple-choice morality test. A, take accountability for your own mistakes. B, protect an alleged predator. And today, following the release of the sweeping and devastating U.S. Soccer Federation report that confirmed each of one of your greatest fears, you also know this. All of them need to go. Gavin Wilkinson must be fired today. Merritt Paulson must sell the teams. Yes, both of them. Oram does not say this lightly. It's not a small thing to call for the end of a professional career or for the surrender of an empire, but Paulson's utter lack of transparency and his backroom bargaining to keep the allegations against Riley buried make him an unfit steward of the public trust that is professional soccer in Portland. No, Paulson is not the one who, when Riley was up for another job months after the Thorns fired him, allegedly told the Western New York Flash that he would hire him in a, quote, heartbeat, end quote. Or the one who stunningly blamed the victim by saying Riley was put in a bad position by the player, end quote. Or the one who, according to the Flash's general manager in an interview with investigators, advocated the team bring him aboard. Quote, his comment at the time, Aaron Lyne said, was, get him if we could. All of that was Wilkinson. Even Paulson must now realize he needs to be fired. His actions were brazenly cruel and despicable, but Wilkinson should have been gone a long time ago. There is zero honor in firing him today. Depending on how you look at it, one MLS team executive said Monday, Merritt either enabled Gavin or used Gavin to shield himself from it, end quote. After the Flash hired Riley in 2015, neither interpretation is any more favorable than the other. After the Flash hired Riley in 2015, according to the investigation, headed by former Deputy U.S. Attorney General Sally H., Paulson congratulated the team's president, saying, quote, I have a lot of affection for him. Is that how you talk about a coach who allegedly terrorized his players, a coach you had to fire? But then again, none of this makes sense. Why did the Thorns go to such lengths to act as though Riley's contract was not renewed rather than the truth that he was fired with cause? Years after Riley left Portland, according to the report, Paulson misrepresented the nature of the allegations against the coach to the owner of the North Carolina Courage. So no, Paulson cannot solve this problem simply by firing Wilkinson. He doesn't get credit for waiting this long to do the right thing. That's not justice for Shim, Farrelly, or the other unnamed women in the report who detailed allegations against Riley. Not for the others who may be out there, or for the little girls who just want to play soccer and have no idea what kind of world they're stepping into. Paulson, who the report said knew about non-sexual allegations against Riley as early as 2014, made his disregard for all of those women painfully, brutally, heart-achingly clear with the links he went to behind the scenes to keep the allegations hidden. But this is who Merritt Paulson has proven himself to be. Each time he has been confronted with his own failings, he's deflected blame and attempted to keep the truth out of public view. Despite his pledge last year in an open letter to fans that he would be transparent, nothing actually changed. Here's what Paulson's transparency looks like today from the investigation quote. The Thorns refused to produce documents for months, making specious arguments, causing months of delay, and impeding interviews with key witnesses, end quote. In summary, the Thorns' lack of cooperation delayed our investigation, end quote. For Paulson, that open letter to fans was a public relations tactic. We know that now. Transparency was a buzzword to buy himself time. It was not an organizational value or mandate. If it was, the Thorns would have made president of business Mike Golub, found to have made a sexual remark to a former Thorns coach in addition to the allegations of inappropriate workplace behavior reported by the Oregonian this summer, available to investigators. They would not have been publicly admonished by Yates' team for being so uncooperative. Make no mistake, the Timbers and Thorns would not exist today without Paulson, but they no longer need him to thrive. The identity of the Thorns and Timbers is not the ownership group. It is the robust and passionate fan base that has made Portland the soccer hub, and it is in spite of Paulson's presence, not because of it. He must sell. That's from Bill Oram at the Oregonian. That came out yesterday. So, yeah, Soccer for Good OG, sunshine's the best disinfectant. And then the conversation back and forth with Portland, with Nixon, the OG, about Andy Polo. Going back to Nancy Armour, it wasn't the Thorns were not the only one that decided to kind of not give the information in a timely fashion. We mentioned the Thorns. Nancy Armour says Chicago Red Stars unnecessarily delayed the production of relevant documents over the course of nearly 9 months. Then she mentions Jeff Plush again. Plush, who helped bury damaging info about abusive coaches, never responded to our outreach. Nancy Armour, Cone is right, meaning Cindy Parlow Cone, that the issues are systemic and that their roots are in the youth soccer system. She's also acknowledging reality when she says U.S. Soccer can't tell the NWSL what to do about its misogynistic owners. But Nancy Armour, no woman should be abused like the NWSL players world. No girl should be subjected to an atmosphere that minimizes her value, makes her believe she has no power. If Paulson and Whistler are allowed to continue as NWSL owners, and once again, Nancy Armour, USA Today, U.S. Soccer and the league's promises of change will be nothing more than empty words, and it will only be a matter of time before some other women pay the price. That's where we are. And read the Oregonian, read the Tribune, read the Sun-Times, read the Athletic, Oregon Live, Washington Post. Molly Hensley Clancy's done some great work in the initial investigations. Meg Linehan at the same time, Steph Yang at the Athletic, if you have those subscriptions. And the report. The report's readily available. I know that we don't have book club here at SDH, but this probably should be the first book club. It is reading this report from beginning to end so we all know, A, what the next steps should be, and sadly, what the steps that weren't taken, what they are. So read it from back to front. Read all of your sources. Read all of your local papers. Because this is where all of those reports and all of those individuals and all of those calls to action will be found. And it's now up to the NWSL and Jessica Berman, the new commissioner. How about having this thrown on your front desk as the new commissioner? Where she is at a point now with a league that has a whole lot of promise in new places like Los Angeles with what we're seeing at Angel City. North of 30,000 for San Diego games at Snapdragon. Now what? What do you do from here? It's one of her greatest challenges out of the blocks. She hasn't even been in the job, I don't think, 6 months. And she now has this as a challenge going forward. What do you do from here? That's the larger question here. When you look at Jonathan Tannenwald, who has been a tremendous follower, supporter, flag bearer for the women's game, and you see his work as well. A lot of the information is new concerning the depths of Paul Riley's alleged coercion of Fairley in Philadelphia, allegedly leveraged his position as the coach in charge in WPS to force a sexual relationship, also accused of harassing other players throughout his career. Christy Holly, now we know why players didn't want to go to Racing Louisville. Report details, and this is from Tannenwald at the Philadelphia Inquirer. The report details how Holly treated players at Louisville and Sky Blue, which played at Rutgers University Soccer Stadium, Rory Dames, subject to the multiple complaints by players, including Kristen Press, about abusive behavior. Once again, quoting Sally Yates as a part of this. The most basic measures from Sally Yates, quote, those who were in a position to make a difference didn't. They not only failed to respond appropriately to evidence of abuse, they had also failed to institute the most basic measures to prevent and address these issues to begin with, even as some of them privately acknowledged the need for these things, end quote. The report takes to task in WSL and U.S. Soccer, obviously. The report says, quote, the league's relationship with the federation was a source of both confusion and consternation. In the haste to get the league off the ground, the federation conducted limited financial due diligence on the new league's prospective owners, did not put in place the infrastructure or planning necessary to support the league over the long haul, and said the focus was putting 8 teams on the field. In her news conference, Sally Yates said, quote, in general, it appeared the teams, the league, and the federation prioritized concerns of legal exposure to litigation by coaches or the risk of drawing negative attention, that they prioritized these things over player safety. So that's where we are. Statement from U.S. Soccer said the task force will share an action plan with U.S. Soccer membership and the public, outlining next steps for implementation of the report's remaining recommendations by January 31st. It is bigger than one person. You now have the connection to FIFA as well. Keep an eye on Dan Flynn. His name came up repeatedly in the report. He's the CEO of the U.S. Soccer Federation. Number of instances, once again from Tannenwald, number of instances where Flynn may have learned of allegations and complaints, whether formal or informal, no action was taken. The report notes that Flynn, quote, declined to be interviewed but provided written responses to our questions through counsel. Flynn retired from U.S. Soccer in late 2019. Summer of 2020, running the bid process for potential host cities for the 26th FIFA Men's World Cup, played in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. This past April, FIFA hired Flynn to be a senior executive advisor and one of the organization's 2 main point people in the United States for organizing the tournament, in which Philadelphia is one of the 16 host cities. Asked whether U.S. Soccer would raise a complaint with FIFA about Flynn's role, Cohn said, quote, there are many people who are not necessarily still under U.S. Soccer's umbrella that have gone on to other places, whether in our sport or outside of our sport, and those entities will have to make the decision that they want to make. Obviously, discussions will continue. So that's where we are. Yeah, Knicks, definitely. I want to thank all the reporters involved in bringing this to light. They're not done. These are the important stories that wouldn't get told without them, literally. The amount of grief press, and I can't remember the other, got for not going to racing. It was, give me a second. It was Tobin Heath, I think, for not going to racing. Sickening in light of all of this. I think it was Tobin Heath, if memory serves. Yeah, so that's where we are. So I know it's, and meanwhile, the Spanish press burned. In particular, Marca has turned into mouthpieces for the FA, calling the players prima donnas, et cetera. It's disgusting, yeah. And I don't think it's going to be the end of that either. as everything continues to go forward. But that's where we are. That is let me see if all of my tabs have been addressed here this morning. Tannenwald, Oregonian. Yeah, and the material involving Cindy Parlow from the Oregonian is just disgusting. Steph Yang reminding us about Portland and Chicago racing. Louisville refused to produce certain documents as well. But once again, the investigation was not empowered to require or enforce any sort of punishment or corrective action. Once again, this is recommendations in the executive summary from this. You look at all of this, and once again, Steph Yang makes the point that the Yates Report focuses mostly on the three organizations associated with Riley, Dames, and Holly, Red Stars Racing, and Portland, but makes clear the situations did not exist in a vacuum, and goes into the whole Racing Louisville situation where Holly was terminated for cause August 31st, no elaboration. The Yates Report says Holly was fired after an internal racing investigation. Then it gets into the Aaron Simon discussion, and I will leave that to your reading. Made my stomach churn, frankly. Racing waived Simon in June of this year ahead of her move to Leicester City in the WSL. So all of these things and all of these tabs that I have open this morning bring a certain element to this investigation. And you hope that with this door being opened, that everyone will storm through it and continue to bring all of the information, as stomach churning as it is, to light so we can actually have real change. I know that it's probably somewhat Pollyanna-ish for me to ask for something like that, but you hope for change. You hope for empathy. You hope for an increase in the improvement of the human condition to where we're taking these kinds of situations and learning from them instead of letting them continue to be as they were. And I apologize this morning for being as angry as I seem on the air. I try to handle myself as journalistically as possible. But the more the information came out, the more disgusted I became. And I thought that it was important to have the depth of the discussion and the release of the details from all of the different sources that I've, bookmarked this morning. And it's just a small sampling of it that we've seen here. It is the NWSL is heading to their playoffs, and they have the Yates Report come out. How does the NWSL respond? Yes, I read the paragraph or two paragraphs or whatever, but how do you respond? This is the megaphone to the NWSL. How do you respond now? What do you do? Is Merritt Paulson forced to sell? Is Gavin Wilkinson fired? And what happens with Mike Golub? The front office in Portland. What happens there? What happens with the ownership, specifically Arnim Whistler in Chicago? And Uncle, you really hope you get new ownership for the Thorns and Timbers. And I thought that the multiple stories / columns that came out of the Oregonian and Oregon Live, I thought were important to this process this morning. And the fans do deserve better. But remember, Nix, at the same time, that we got into the Orem column, and the fans in Portland knew, and they stood behind their players, supported their players in all of this, supported the human beings that were being affected, because they got it. They understand. It is both a present and a past tense. And, Uncle, in reading the stuff from Oregon Live and the Oregonian, It will be difficult. I will say this. I will say this where Merritt Paulson is concerned. It will be difficult, I think, to point an index finger at him and do what Orem asks out of the Oregon Live column, to sell both the Timbers and the Thorns. I think the Thorns, because of the Yates Report, are the easier of the two. I think that you can put your operative arm around Merritt Paulson and sit there and say, okay, because of what has come to light, you probably should sell the Timbers as well, and encourage him to do so. But to the point of Sally Jenkins and Nancy Armour, really there should be folks, if it is proven that these individuals did what they did, a lot of them should be facing criminal charges. And once again, part of the process. Yeah, the fans and Paulson have had a long, tumultuous relationship. Yeah. Where does it go from here? Does Merritt Paulson do the right thing? Does he step aside? Does he dismiss Wilkinson and Golub from their positions? Who does? Who asks them to step aside? Because now that this door has been opened, what happens next? That's the next thing for me. How many more cities do we hear from? How many more investigations? How many more players come forward? How large is this iceberg that we've run into yesterday, thankfully? How big is it, and where do we go from here? And Uncle, I would hope and trust, and I know it's an early morning for you, and thanks for hanging out on my very early morning for you on a very, very rough day for Portland sports. And thank you for hanging out and being a part of the conversation. Keep us posted on what's going on there on the ground in Portland, and let us continue to see how things are going to continue to evolve there. So keep us be our eyes and ears there as best you can when it comes to what's going on there in Portland, because the players deserve better. Soccer deserves better. The youth deserve better, so they can see something that happens and work toward a future in a sport that they love, and love to have the camaraderie and the friendship and the athleticism and all of those aspects that are attached to it. Everyone attached to the sport deserves better than what we've seen and what we got yesterday, what we've had happen in the last year from the investigations at the Post and the Athletic, and then the Yates Report yesterday. We all deserve better. What are we going to do about it? So that's where we are. Thank you for the 25-minute soliloquy on this. So obviously, this isn't going anywhere. We're not done with it. So we'll see what continues to happen. Since I've hit a bit of a transition point, let me go ahead and get the promo out of the way. 20 minutes late. So I'll find our music, get into our promo, and continue to work forward here. And we'll go into Juice Box's viewing habits and everything else going on today here coming up in just a little bit. But first, time for the promo. Lemonize Service, proud sponsors of everything STH. QR code over my left shoulder. For those of you watching on Twitch, for odor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go, it's Lemonize Service. Deodorizing enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos, the Lemonize Service has created a customized solution that eliminizes all organic odors, including those like pet, cigarettes, and food. Realtors and property managers use Lemonize to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent their homes that much faster. The turnkey process makes it easy to work with realtors and property managers. Kind of the environment we like that these days. Very green way of going about things without any kind of toxic residue, getting rid of odors. Different than Febreze or other masking agents that we have either under the sink or above the cupboard. Because when you reach above you and go into the cupboard, you reach below you underneath the sink, you bring out that masking agent, you spray it in the air. That's why they call it a masking agent, because all you're doing is masking the odor. You're not attacking the problem all the way down to the molecule like Lemonize does with their proven scientific formula. Pricing easy, one of two ways, either by cubic foot or parts per million to come up with a price that's affordable for you, offering results in 24 hours or less. One thing you need to do if you are interested, is go to the website. Go to Eliminize.com, and this is where I grab my pen. But do us a favor. After the .com, go /Atlanta, so Eliminize knows what part of the world that you are reaching out to them from, so they can have them, so you can have them attack your problem and help you out. So your full homework assignment with Eliminize, ELIMINIZE.com, Eliminize.com /Atlanta. Grow to free, clean, fresh air. Eliminize.com. Eliminize Service, proud sponsors of everything SDH. Attempting slow fade at the end of the promo read. And there's your slow fade at the end of the promo read. So, all right. So viewing habits for today. This was not a tab that I had popped up at the beginning of the show. All right. Soccer on TV. B1G's got men's soccer at 7 o'clock. We've got Champions League today. That starts at 12:45. We'll get into juice boxes there in just a little bit. 2 to NA has Bayern Munich and Victoria Pilsen at 12:45. Inter and Barca is 3. And that's also on Univision. ACC Extra has college action starting at 6. ESPN Plus. Action in the championship at 2:55. Cardiff City, Blackburn Rovers. A lot of action in the men's and women's college games starting at 4 on the women's side, 6 on the men's side. Flow has College of Charleston and Incarnate Word at 7. Paramount Plus has 8 matches in the Champions League, the 2 at 12:45, Marseille and Sporting being the other, and the 6 at 3 o'clock to choose from. Argentina Primera actually starts at 1 o'clock with Aldosivi and Baracas Central on Paramount Plus. 2 at 3:30, 1 at 6, 1 at 8:30, and the Brasileiro with Juventude and Corinthians is at 8:30 as well. So that's your look at soccer on TV for the day. Let's get into the juice boxes and go through all of that. See what we have here today. Right now, you've got action going on in Asia, Eastern Europe. It's lower division stuff. You've got youth league material going on, reserve leagues. That gets us into the morning where you get into the Middle East and North Africa. AFC Cup with Oman and Bahrainian franchises. That's at 11 o'clock. Copa Italia and Serie C. Champions League, 12:45, your juice boxes. Bayern Munich, no surprise, minus 1430 going up against Victoria Pilsen, who's north of plus 3,300. Marseille is a plus 135 at home going up against Sporting. Sporting is a plus 218. Your draws a plus 239. We mentioned the Liga Profesional de Football in Argentina. Baracas Central is at a plus 125 on the road at Aldosivi, who's at plus 2.25. Also, EFL Trophy in the lower divisions going on today. That gets us into the 2 o'clock hour. Championships got 4 matches. Bristol City, Coventry, Luton, Huddersfield, Sheffield United, QPR, Sunderland, and Blackpool. All 4 of the teams at home are favorites in that. Lower divisions in the FA Cup, you've got 4 in League 1, 4 in League 2. National League is up and running. Wrexham, just to give you the numbers. At Notts County, Notts County is a favorite at a plus 110. Wrexham is a plus 221. And no, I need to see Welcome to Wrexham. I have yet to see an episode, so I need to. Northern Ireland, San Marino, Scotland gets you into the championship again at 3 o'clock with 2 other matches. Norwich, a big favorite on the road at Reading. Sorry, Jess. Norwich is a minus 106. Reading's a plus 300. Cardiff is a plus 135 as Blackburn visits at a plus 219. Champions League, 3 o'clock, 6 matches. Ajax a favorite at home at a plus 125 hosting Napoli. Liverpool a big favorite at home at a minus 625 as Rangers come to town. Atletico Madrid favorite on the road at a minus 102 at Club Brugge. Inter and Barca. Barca's a minus 1.25 at Inter, who's a plus 330. Spurs are a plus 116 against Eintracht Frankfurt, who's a plus 238. Porto at home against Bayer Leverkusen's a plus 112. Bayer Leverkusen is a plus 236. 330. Godoy Cruz, a home favorite against San Lorenzo. Newell's a home favorite at plus 125 against Arsenal Sarandi. Sarmiento Junín at 6 is a home dog as Tigre comes to town. Yes, thank you, Uncle. That's what I keep hearing, and I know I've got to have time to do it, but this time of season with football, it's kind of hard. But no, I'll take your word for it. Liga de Expansión in 8. Vélez Sarsfield Bonfield is going on at 8:30 in the Liga Profesional in Argentina. Vélez Sarsfield even money at plus 100. CONCACAF League's going on tonight. Probably can catch that on FS2. Real España, our friends out of Honduras, and our friends out of Costa Rica. Alajuelense. Alajuelense is a road dog at a plus 225. Real España is your favorite. Liga de Expansión wraps it up at 10:05. Getting into the gossip of the day before we go, and anything else that's going on. If there's anything that I've legitimately missed, let me know, and we will get into those discussions. What is today? Tuesday. So it is today's Tuesday gossip. Yes, Cristiano Ronaldo, 37, allowed to leave Manchester United in January. That's by the Telegraph. I think a lot of folks are probably going to sit there and say, yeah, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Chelsea believed to be monitoring Gabriel Martinelli from Arsenal. Gunners have offered Bukayo Saka a $200,000 a week, £200,000 a week salary figure to extend his stay with the club. In addition to talks with RB Leipzig about signing France forward Christopher Nkunku, Chelsea are also discussing signing Croat center back Josko Vardiol from the German club. That's according to our friends at 90 Minutes. Blues will also assess the goalkeeping situation at the club over the coming months, with Edouard Mendy yet to sign a new contract. Manchester United's manager, Erik ten Hag, has told the club's hierarchy not to offer any players new contracts until he works out who deserves them. That's from the Telegraph. France defender William Saliba has confirmed his representatives have spoken to Arsenal about signing a new deal. Xavi says it is not the moment, in quotation marks, to talk about Lionel Messi returning to the club and to, quote, leave him in peace to enjoy his time at PSG, according to ESPN. Wolves Chiefs in no rush to fast-track a replacement for Bruno Lage, who was sacked back on Sunday. Rafa Benitez is an option to replace Steve Cooper at Forest if the basement club decide to make a change. Former Watford manager Rob Edwards, Bournemouth caretaker boss Gary O'Neill are in the frame to replace sacked Chris Wilder as the manager of Middlesbrough. Bournemouth, Palace, and Leicester monitoring 23-year-old Sheffield United and Wales left-back Reece Norrington-Davies. Newcastle have agreed to a new 2-year contract extension with Callum Wilson, according to our friends at 90 Minutes. So that is your run-through of all of the gossip, rumor, and innuendo on the day. So let's see about other news of the day while we are here. And Jurgen Klopp says Liverpool needs to get back to basics to get out of their current slump as the Reds get ready for Rangers here today. I just realized, and this is something that until I just saw the headline, in the championship right now, second division in England, 8 managers are already gone. 8. 1/3 of the group. 1/3. You just passed the first weekend in October, and you've got matches in the midweek, and it is apparently unprecedented territory. 1/3 of the managers have already been gone. Watford appointed Rob Edwards on the expiry of Roy Hodgson's contract. June 1st, QPR appointed Michael Beale. Blackburn appointed Yondal Thomason. Burnley appointed Vincent Kompany. Blackpool appointed Michael Appleton. Birmingham appointed John Eustace after Lee Boyer. Huddersfield appointed Danny Schofield following the resignation of Carlos Corberán. Here's who's gone. Wilder at Middlesbrough, Arveladze at Hull, Edwards at Watford, Steve Morrison at Cardiff, Schofield at Huddersfield, O'Neill at Stoke. They've all been sacked. Alex Neil left Sunderland to go to Stoke, and Paul Warren left Rotherham to go to Derby. So that's what you're looking at right now. 1/3 of the managers have already been churned in and out. Churned in and out in the championship. Rebecca Vardy, we'll just kind of read the headline here. Rebecca Vardy's been ordered to pay £1.5 million toward Colleen Rooney's legal costs over the Wagatha Christie trial. She lost the libel claim in July. Ruling issued on Tuesday said she has to pay 90% of Rooney's costs, with £800,000 paid by 4 p.m. November 15th. The final figure of the legal costs came to £1 2/3 million. So there you go. The cost of losing a court case. I know that Nix is still happy about Leicester knocking off Nottingham Forest yesterday 4-0. So the way things look in the standings right now, we'll focus on the relegation fight. Quickly in the Prem, I know that Forest is at the bottom, and I think it's on goal difference. So yes, Nottingham Forest, Leicester still have the same. They have the same record. Leicester getting their first win of the year in their 8th match. 1-1-6. Leicester's goal difference is -8 after getting the +4 yesterday. Nottingham Forest is at a -15 right now in goal difference after 8 matches. Wolves are in the relegation zone with 6 points. Crystal Palace, one less match played, is at 6 points. Southampton, West Ham at 7. And Aston Villa is at 8. Leeds and Bournemouth right now 12th and 13th. They're at 9 points, all within one win of being out of the or involved in the relegation fight. Yeah. Next, love your guy Jamie, but the Rebecca stuff is funny. Yeah, both at 4 points, need to win at least 3 of your next 4, and I think you've got a manageable schedule, if I'm not mistaken. You've got Bournemouth coming up, and that will be in 6 days' time. So that you get Monday Night Football next week. Okay, so Bournemouth and Leicester next week, Monday Night Football for match week number 9 for that. So we'll keep an eye on that one as well. Midweek matches once again in the lower divisions in England, so we'll keep an eye on that as well. Champions League, that is today and tomorrow. So we have group stage today, group stage tomorrow. So we'll have stuff to talk about with that as well, no doubt. Bournemouth, Palace, Leeds, Wolves. Yeah, need to reap when you can. So it's a chance for you to climb up the table. Programming, we'll get into that. Once again, we're chasing folks that are reporting on the Yates Report. And so we'll try to have those 1v1s hopefully up in the next little bit. Your USL programming is out today. USL Championship, USL League One, and Prem and Proper, they will be out later today. And if any of our folks that are involved in the Yates Report are with us, then we will catch up with them as well. Once again, Dylan Butler joining us tomorrow at 10. Power Hour Thursday, we go from 9 to 10 because of the high school football commitments. Thursdays with Nico, hopefully will be on Thursday this week, 5 o'clock live on Thursday. And then College Showcase. And College Showcase will be a part of the programming that is released on your Friday. So thanks to Jarrett for coming in for the first hour of the show. And thanks to y'all specifically. As always, thanks for coming in and being a part of the discussion on what is really a very difficult day in the sport of soccer. It's been a difficult 24 hours, but to see the report come out yesterday and have all the different points of view that have been attached to it. And once again, final reminder, don't just stick to one source. Be as well-versed and well-read in this as possible, because it literally is a market-by-market thing. So if you're reading Oregon Live, if you're reading the Sun-Times, you're reading the Trib, you're reading the Washington Post, you're reading the National folks, check out the Triangle papers, all of the New York papers, possibly Louisville, see what the Courier Journal's doing there. So just follow along market by market along with all of your national stuff as we continue when the story continues to grow and evolve as it does. So on that note, I think that's a show for today. And I'm going to try and I'm going to try to drink some liquid here and keep an eye on the rowdy pup who is guarding right there. So he's guarding with his eyes closed. But thanks for hanging out on a very difficult day in the sport. And I know that we're going to be talking about more of it, but I thought it was appropriate to talk about it as much as possible today. We'll get into the week that was with tomorrow in Major League Soccer. But we'll get into the weekend that was in and around outside of Atlanta United. We'll get into that more tomorrow. Dylan Butler joining us at 10 o'clock. Last word goes to Nick. As much as I love the sport, all the bad news, whether it's yesterday's stuff, racism, violence, etc., too many bad days like today. As Soccer for Good OG said, though, part of society that must be faced. It's true. And I think that if we all lock arms and face it together, I think we, now, like I said, it might be Pollyanna-ish on my part, but I think that we really can do some good if we look out for each other and look out for those who may feel that they don't have anybody looking out for them. So I think that's part of our mission going forward. So once again, thanks to all y'all for hanging out with us. Mucha plata, y'all, as we end another show. And since it is the end of the show, that means on a Tuesday, I get to do this.